Recovery Ecosystem Podcast is an initiative of Detroit Recovery Project, Incorporated. Our mission is to support sustained recovery, health, and wellness.
Hi, this is Andre Johnson. We are back to talk about the recovery ecosystem. This is our Recovery Ecosystem Podcast, and today, in this moment, we will focus on Chapter 8, Mentors and Sponsors. You know, I've often heard people talk about how they've moved through life without the help of people. And I think it's absolutely impossible to move through life in this world and to develop some type of excellent skill or just become great without having perhaps a mentor or a sponsor, somebody to support you, somebody to encourage you, somebody to help you build your self-confidence, somebody to say, you got this. It means a lot. And I think in this book, you know, I wrote, let me just read what I wrote. When choosing mentor or sponsors, people should look for individuals they look up to and want to emulate. These individuals should have the characteristics and traits that they wish to possess. People in recovery need a variety of mentors, such as fatherhood role models, motherhood role models, physical health role models, education role models, business role models, financial management role models, and recovery role models. Mentors and sponsors should be people the recovering person can relate to in some way. People who can take those in recovery to the next level and in whatever area of life they are currently striving to excel. So this is a very straightforward chapter because it's really discussing the importance of finding somebody that you want to emulate and somebody that perhaps you can develop a relationship with and begin that they can kind of walk you through the steps and even some pitfalls that they may have been able to help you avoid whatever your endeavors are. And so having a mentor has been valuable. You know, I've been fortunate to have a man by the name of Alan Bray, Calvin Trent, and H. Wesley Clark, and these were all dynamic men, you know. Alan Bray, I met him when I was about 18 years old, and it's interesting because they all came in my life during different periods, and I met Dr. Trent, Calvin Trent, when I was about 28, 29 years old. And that was a pivotal moment in my life in terms of becoming a father and learning and having someone who can advise me and kind of support and teach me parenting skills from a father's perspective, something I didn't necessarily have. Because a lot of times stuff don't come with a handbook. It don't come with a playbook. And so what I have right here is the recovery ecosystem, is the playbook on how to move. And how to move is really being able to find somebody that aligns with your belief system, your value system. Because so many of us are often moving based on what we may see in social media or based on hearsay versus being able to move based on someone else's experiences that can kind of walk you down the path of whatever it is that you're pursuing. And so this here chapter is really vital. And sometimes, you know, being a creative learner, and that can involve, we live in this era where everything is pretty much on the World Wide Web. And so if you wanted to access videos on YouTube or access virtual audio books, etc., based on whatever it is that you're pursuing, it's all at your fingertips. Take full advantage of it. And I'll guarantee you, you know, most people I know that have been successful in this life have been successful. They always yield to mentors and people who sponsor and supported them. And I know I'm only as good as the people who supported, mentored, and sponsored me, especially when it comes to starting an organization. My story has been, when I started this organization, I was encouraged by my mentors simultaneously. And not only was I encouraged, one mentor said, here's $100,000 of seed money to get started. And so when somebody gives you that type of boost, so to speak, and we were able to turn that 100,000 into a $10 million corporation years later, that comes from experience, but it also comes from being taught. I use the word financial management role models. Sometimes we don't have that financial integrity, and we have to be taught how to have financial integrity. We have to be taught how to have financial discipline. We have to be taught how to have fatherhood. I talked about father and motherhood. Some women have to be taught how to be better mothers, better fathers. And it's always good to have role models in those areas, because a lot of times we're treading this new territory for the very first time. And if you have an opportunity to link or partner with somebody that have experienced strengths and hope, then perhaps you may want to connect with that person. So I think building those strong relationships is vital to one's recovery. But, the recovery person, especially newly recovering person, always needs somebody to kind of cheerlead for them to a certain extent. They need to be able to talk how to have fun and be clean, and enjoy life as other people do. And if you don't have nobody that you can look up to that has done those things, then it's easy to fall back to the old ways and the old patterns. But I want to just read another excerpt. Life will at times demand that an individual respond to a situation immediately. Mentor sponsors have tried and tested unique techniques and strategies they can use in these situations. For example, a person in recovery may experience the death of a loved one. That situation requires the immediate application of coping skills for dealing with death. A mentor sponsor who has had that experience can walk their mentee through the grieving process. This is considered a priceless protective factor. Again, it's benefit to having people in your life. If you've ever heard of one of the renowned psychologists, Abraham Maslow, he has something called the hierarchy, the pyramid hierarchy that he developed, and it's like different layers and levels. And one of the layers and levels, one of the levels or layers, he talks about belongingness. And that's another thing that's a value of important. We are all human beings. We all need that social connectedness, that social interaction. And that's some of the beauty that comes with having a mentor or sponsor, somebody you can laugh with, but you can also cry with, somebody you can learn from. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become a millionaire or become rich, but you can have a very rich relationship with people that you want to emulate and grow from. And because usually they want to, in some cases, support you on your journey. And that's what life is really about, having somebody that can support us on our journey. Because, it's easy for the ego to say, I don't need nobody, I got this. And then in the meantime, you're steady crashing or burning, or if you're not crashing and burning, you're extremely stagnated, meaning that you're not really moving at all. You're just moving in circles. And so we want to break those patterns, because we know people who are in early recovery, they also have a lot of old ways that need to be broken. The old ways that gave them the energy to continue that chase, to continue chasing that dragon, chasing that monkey, chasing that bottle, chasing that drug, whatever the case is. We got to break a lot of patterns. And that's the benefit, again, of having a sponsor, somebody who has knowledge but also lives their lives according to new principles. We have to embrace new principles in our life. And some of the principles, basic principles that I always like to promote is the principle of having faith. Having faith that your life can get better. And having faith the size of a mustard seed. In fact, I'll show you all one day my jar of mustard seeds that I generally give out to people who I may feel may be struggling in the faith area. There's some people think I got to have all this faith. But the Bible, and I'm not necessarily preaching, but I will say the Bible says faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. And so sometimes we need that faith when we are embarking on new endeavors, whether it's pursuing a higher education or whether it's pursuing a significant other, whatever the case may be. We want to have somebody that can kind of help us in that process. I want to read, how much time we got?
We got like 10 more minutes.
What is it on, 20?
Yeah, you went 20. Oh, that seemed kind of quick, unless I'm just not paying attention.
Well, I don't know, brother, but
Yeah, that was
that's cool. I'm going to read this and we're going to wrap it up.
okay, because we started at 30. We're on 51 right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me read this vignette. Jacob is a 30-year-old man who has been clean for a year. He regularly attends Alcoholics Anonymous meetings to ensure he doesn't resume to binge drinking. He binge drinking like he used to do. A woman named Katie volunteered to be Jacob's sponsor shortly after he began attending the meetings. Katie had been sober for 5 years and has been able to teach him good sober living habits. When Jacob's younger brother died suddenly in a car accident, he was able to reach out to Kate for guidance. Instead of reaching for a bottle, Kate spent 3 hours with Jacob, first on the phone, then visiting him at his apartment to help him process his emotions and avoid drinking to forget or deal with his emotional pain. Jacob was able to cope with the situation at the moment with Kate's help and began attending therapy sessions with a therapist Kate referred to manage the loss of his brother going forward. See, again, when you have these unexpected loss in your life, whether it's loss of job, loss of loved one, it's very normal to become depressed. It's very normal to become distressed. And it's also normal to use drugs or alcohol to try to cope with that. But when you have a mentor or a sponsor, somebody you can disclose with where you are at, it gives them that opportunity to support you, so to help mitigate you from drinking or using drugs to cope with your pain. Because emotional pain is nothing to play with. And when a person is experiencing emotional pain, they become very vulnerable to practicing some unhealthy things. So ideally, having a mentor and or a sponsor is having somebody support you on your journey. Whether it's pursuing marriage, pursuing a life of spirituality, or a vegetarian, whatever the case can be. It's always good to have somebody that has knowledge, experience, strength, and hope to ultimately help you on your journey. So listen, at this time, we're going to wrap up this segment of the show. I encourage you to read the Recovery Ecosystem book, and I encourage you to read each chapter. It's an easy read, 15 chapters. The chapter here in mentorship and sponsor, it's a really, really good chapter where we talk about dysfunctional sponsors and mentors as well, and how that can contribute to being a risk factor. And then we also talk about the values of mentors and sponsors through the connections over the long run. So next we'll be moving forward and we'll start talking about healthy family connections. All right, so welcome back again. We're here to discuss the Recovery Ecosystem Podcast. And this segment will focus on healthy family connections. I often hear people talk about, I don't care, you can't, what they say, you can't pick your family. And some family members you have to stay away from, and then some that means you a lot of good. Here, I talk about families, not only your blood family, but your extended families can be very, very important to your recovery process. Because I think what happens is people who are active members of 12-step programs sometimes come from environments where family use drugs and alcohol, and they have to rely on a new extended family to sustain their sobriety and recovery. So family is important. And then there's a lot of healing that needs to occur in some families. There's been a lot of grief, a lot of loss, a lot of trauma that have occurred in some families, and it requires healing. But I'll talk a little bit about this segment, which is just healthy family connections and what the recovery ecosystem deems as protective factors. Healthy family connections act as a protective factor because those connections provide a sense of restoration and reunification for people in recovery. Addiction destroy families and break connections. Family healing can have a profound impact on individuals in recovery. It gives a sense of belonging that replaces the sense of belonging to certain drug subcultures. Healthy family connections act as a protective factor because people in recovery are motivated to maintain those connections with family members that they have worked to rebuild. Once they regain the trust of a family member, which is a process, they take that into consideration when attempting to use it. So again, it's important because now you have begun to prioritize your family connections, and in some cases we know drug and alcohol use can significantly impact family dynamics and family relationships. So here we want to just have that self-awareness that, part of the recovery process is rebuilding, restoring, and reunification. And so that takes time, and it's a process. Especially for what I've seen a lot working in this industry is parents who may have gotten incarcerated or perhaps been using drugs for a long term or a long time, often abandoned their children. And now we have these children who may not want to have anything to do with you, and they need a lot of healing. And in some cases, they may have been exposed to some of the trauma that came with active addiction. And so we all got to heal as a family, as a community, because it's just important. And it's the thing that we don't talk about enough, is how important family is. Whether you have a brother, a sister, a father, a mother, grandparent, an uncle, your immediate family, take care of them, but also take care of yourself. Now, in some cases, we know that people burn so many bridges where they don't have family to turn to. And that's okay, too. I would encourage you to turn to your recovery family, because your recovery family, there is a recovery community, and there's somebody who can relate and identify to your struggle. Somebody that can help you. Because recovery people are people helping people, and we all need help to some degree. But in this case, we all need new families. And in some cases, you may build your own family. You may wake up one day and tell your significant other, I want to marry you and have kids. Or your significant other may wake up and tell you, I want you to marry me and have kids. Whatever the case might be, it's a lot of value that comes with family connection, and feeling love, being loved is important. It's good for the soul, it's good for the heart, it's good for the spirit. So again, I just want to just reiterate, family connections is something we can't talk about enough. I'll give you another example of another vignette. Susan is a 43-year-old woman with 18 months in recovery. She struggled with heroin addiction for over 20 years. Due to her addiction, she damaged family connection to the point that her family did not want anything to do with her. The first month she entered the recovery process, she tried to reach out to her family, only to be told they were not interested in reconnecting with her. She was told, "We've heard this I'm in recovery story before." Susan was in treatment at the time, vented to the therapist who helped her process her family's reaction. After 6 months of leaving treatment, she lived in a transition house. She obtained employment. She moved into an apartment with a friend. She tried to contact her family again. She had been clean for 1 year. She invited her family to an open 12-step meeting program. Her mother decided to actually come, but she was guarded while in Susan's presence. When Susan was 14 months clean, she called her mother just to say hello. To her shock, her mother invited her to lunch at a restaurant. She was nervous as she was on a first date with her teenager. She spoke to her sponsor, who shared her experience reconnecting with their family. Based on her sponsor's experience, Susan kept the conversation light and allowed her mother to take the lead. After lunch, they left the restaurant. Susan's mother said, "What are you doing for dinner on Sunday?" So, it was a slow process where they began to slowly reconnect. She had to regain trust and faith in her mother, and her mother started to believe in her because she started seeing her more and more, and she can see the glow in Susan's face. And so I think in a way, we want to encourage people to build and support relationships. Families are important. Family connections are important. I can never say that enough. Family connections are important. Whether it's an internal family or external family, keep building and keep focusing. Thank you very much.
All right, that one was like.
The Recovery Ecosystem Podcast is produced by Detroit Recovery Project, Incorporated. If you or someone you know needs support for substance use or mental health, call 313-365-3100 or visit recoveryfordetroit.com. You are not alone.